Throne Liberty has came to a point where people have been quitting. The player base has been stabilizing after the holidays. A lot of people are getting tired of farming runes all day, getting dominated by massive Zerg alliances, and not being able to progress, being stuck on T1 gear. In this video, I'll be covering what I think needs to happen in Throne Liberty to bring players back, but also to make less people quit the game. So let's jump into the video. The first thing I want to talk about is the massive PvP alliances. I think that is the biggest, or one of the biggest issues in the game currently, is most of the servers are being dominated by one big alliance, or a big alliance that's teamed up with another big alliance to basically dominate all the loot and all the server bosses and PvP bosses in the servers. The biggest issue with this is people that are casual or are not part of these guilds cannot enjoy any PvP content, unfortunately. So these massive alliances, what the issue with that is that you have to either make a 4-guild alliance yourself, or be part of this, right? And the way, in my opinion, to fix this is to make the alliances smaller. You should only be able to ally with one guild. The reason for that is there will still be players, people or guilds, doing the scummy strategies of teaming up with other small alliances, but at least it won't be a 4-man guild alliance with 250 players teaming up with another one to have 500 players, right? Instead it will be 70 or 100 players teaming up with another 100 players. The reason why I think this will be good is when you enter PvPBosses, right? Right now, if you go to, for example, Cornelius PvP zone, right? Here, you're going to have 4-man alliance in here and possibly another alliance fighting. But if you make the alliances smaller, you will have a bunch of small alliances. Let's say a 2-guild alliance, 2-guild alliance, 2-guild alliance, fighting for the boss, right? So the fights will be still dominated by the strongest alliance. However, it will be way harder for that strongest alliance to actually fight on 5 or 6, 7 fronts in a free-for-all, right? So making them smaller, it will make the casual players also be able to participate in the fights, be able to come in to get a few hits on the boss or try to third party certain alliances. It will be more playable. All these PvP fights, all these guild siege and siege fights will be more enjoyable, more playable. Some guy made actually a Reddit post too regarding this, of how they can actually fix this by adding mercenary guilds and stuff like that. But I think the first thing would be reducing the size of the guild alliances. You should only be able to ally with one. It'll be more fun for the community, more fun for the casual players, and will bring in way more PvP than the current stale PvP. Second thing I really want to talk about in this, when it comes to PvP bosses in general, is you remember when the guild or the game had a bug of the time zones and the game couldn't figure it out? Because of that, I got to experience a PvP boss at the same time as a Dominion event. So basically, we were fighting at Adentis, I think, right? And during the Adentis fight, what happened is we were also part of a Dominion event. So when you enter the PvP boss, you got assigned to different teams. So you get assigned to green, blue, and red team. And because of that, you weren't part of a guild. You're just part of these massive color alliances, and you just have to fight the red teams and blue teams during the boss fight and get the loot. In my opinion, right now the PvP bosses and the loot, like the general, not the arc bosses, but at least the smaller PvP bosses, I think this would be a great idea to implement into the game and into the servers, because then everybody is on the same level, right? Unfortunately, some people will get unlucky and end up in the green team or something. Nobody likes green, but you end up in the green team and you get dominated. But aside from that, there'll be more PvP for you to do, more equal PvP, and everything won't be like fully guild related, right? So I think some of the bosses could turn into something like a Dominion event. I think would be really good for the game, at least the PvP of the game, right? So I just want to talk about the PvP alliances. I do think they definitely need some fixing and some tuning to do, and hopefully we'll see it in the game, because right now, let's be real, all the servers are being dominated by big guilds. I think this is one of the only servers, raid server, where there's like 5 or 6 alliances fighting each other. And even here, there's like a 12 guild alliance. It's ridiculous, right? But hopefully they do some changes with that. I would love to hear you guys' opinion on this. Next thing I want to talk about is the dailies in this game. If you guys can see right now, I have 4.5k of my dungeon tokens. I did reduce my abyssal contracts, but they will also up to like 30,000. there's a lot of, I have 60 daily contracts to do. Things feel overwhelming, especially if you take a break from the game, right? Let's say you have a busy week, you can't play the game much, or because of the holidays, you come back to the game. There's been a lot of players that took a week off for Christmas, they came back and they quit the game. And the reason for that is you feel so overwhelmed by having all of these things to do. Right now, there's too much to do because you have so much to grind, right? You have the runes to grind. You need to be doing your daily dungeons. You have to be doing your daily contracts. You have to be doing your new event stuff. You have to be doing bosses. You have to be doing events, right? Of course, you can reduce it, but you feel very overwhelmed. So I do think this game needs some kind of catch-up mechanic, or basically a better way to deal with these contracts. What the game should implement, in my opinion, is that you can use double contracts or 2x everything. So let's say I want to do a dungeon, right? Let's say I want to hit up a dungeon, 2-star dungeon right here. I can't do an X2. The X2 will basically, instead of giving me like when you run 2 runs, you'll get 8 of these, right? If you do 2 runs normally. But if you do an X2 run, you'll get 6 of them. But you use more contracts, but you get a little more reward, but that, not as much as you would get by running double. This would make people be able to farm down their dimensional contracts, and at the same time, people that actually play it normally will get more rewards, but it will basically help you get a little bit faster, to remove your dailies. You can do the same with contracts. Either you do the daily contracts, either you do that, you can pick up 10 quests at the same time, or that you get less rewards by double completing each contract, right? Or being able to pick up the same contract. So let's say investigate mana recording in Pure Light Hill, right? You can actually pick up 2 investigate mana recording, so you can duplicate basic contracts. But doing stuff like this will make it so people will still play, people will still enter these dungeons, right? Because right now, for example, me, I'm just sitting here. I'm not going to be doing my dungeons, right? What this leads to is this going to be less people queuing into these dungeons, less people doing them. But if there was a way or an incentive for me to get rid of my contracts faster for a little bit less reward, I would do it. So there needs to be some type of catch mechanic, especially on tedious daily stuff, right? Because people have been running contracts and dungeons for 2 months or 3 months now. People getting tired of doing the same thing, so you need to incentivize them to get rid of these, and that will also help people coming back and taking a break from the game because they know they can fast track their progress, right? So doing some type of catch up mechanic, I think, will be really good for the game where it's currently at. Next, I want to talk about is the weapons. Because this game, what I really liked about the game, and what I think most MMOs should do this day, is being able to not get locked into a class. This game gives you the ability to play different weapons, right? And when you play different weapons, you can swap around, do some fun with it. But in this game, even though you can swap weapons whenever, it is still a hassle to swap your weapons because of the mastery level. And then you have to swap type of gear, all the stuff. So I do think there need to be a way to completely swap mastery. So if I want to try out a different weapon, like a longbow or a staff, I can swap levels. And what they could do to make it more fair is, let's say I want to swap my sword to longbow, and I swap my sword back to longbow. It will turn my level 17 to 16. However, if I swap back from longbow to sword, I will go back to 17. So each of your weapon levels that you actually grinded yourself should have like a watermark to it. But you can also swap down to different weapons to try them out. I think this would be massive. I know there's a new mastery system coming, guys. Don't worry. I know about it. But I really hope they make it much easier to be able to swap weapons, test different builds, because it will maybe ignite some more fun into the game. Right now it is a hassle. I'm playing 3 weapons right now. I really want to test other weapons, but I don't want to go through all that mastery grind and gear swapping grind. So hopefully they make the weapon system a little bit more better to obtain, because in this game you have the advantage of being able to just swap weapons to try out different builds and classes, but the game still limits you with these mastery levels and being able to swap your gear, etc., right? So hopefully we're gonna get some good change with that with the new mastery update. But that is one of the main things I do want to see in the game. Next up is server merges. I never talk about server merges in most MMOs because server merges basically leads to less population, people quitting. But I do think this game needs some type of server merges because the main reason for that is, of course, you're gonna get more servers with more players. But right now, there's so many big alliances, like I talked about earlier, going to these dead servers where there are very few players, bullying these players and just taking over bosses, doing arc bosses, stealing all the solent, lucent, all that stuff, right? On these servers, and there's nothing people can do. They just, one day you're PvPing, having fun, and then suddenly a big alliance comes and just shuts all the PvP down, right? But having fewer servers, there's gonna be less servers to escape to, will increase the PvP in each server, and I think it will be overall really good for the competitive PvP in the game. While I do talk about this, remember of my first suggestion of making PvP alliances smaller and certain bosses, probably some type of Dominion events, but stay time, I think server merges would be really good for the game. Right now, the population has balanced out on a good number, which is probably going to stay with the game, but I would like to see some server merges. Last but not least, we have to talk about this. It's pay to win. Right now, the pay to win has calmed down because we got to a point where there's not much to grind. Right now, the only thing you can get or pay to win is the arc boss weapons. But this is going to become a problem when T2 comes out because T2, unfortunately, is a much more pay to win than T1 was, right? It's going to be a lot more stuff to trade, a lot of different combinations you can run, a lot of new gear, a lot of new stuff, and the pay to win will come back, and pay to win will lead people to quit the game. So hopefully there is other ways to obtain different items, newer ways to obtain an item, because if they just follow the Korean route with no new changes for us, many people are going to quit, and because the pay to win is going to be extreme with the new tier set gear. But that is what I would like to see in Throne Liberty. Would you guys agree with me? Let me know in the comments below. I think the biggest changes for me I would like to see is the PvP alliance changes and some kind of catch-up mechanics for dailies. I think those two changes will help a lot to the game, will help the casual player base also be able to participate in PvP fights. At the end of the day, the casual players will lose, but at least they will be able to experience some fun in the PvP zones, right? Because right now, if you are casual players, you play here and there, you play with a smaller guild, you have no chance. But if the alliances become smaller, there's going to be third parties, four parties, 5, 6, 7, 8 parties, right? You'll be able to sneak in and fight on your side. It's going to be really fun, I think. But yeah, I don't think, I don't know if AGS would ever do anything or change anything, but I do hope to see this. But thank you so much for watching. If you guys want to enjoy more MMO content or Throne Liberty content, I do stream on both YouTube and Twitch. You guys can follow there. Check out this video right here, and I'll see you guys the next time. Bye-bye.